Good morning and welcome to another edition of Sun Dragon Tips and Tricks. My cat can't decide where he wants to be for this episode, so we'll see. And he's gone. Okay, so I took a weekend off last weekend. I hope y'all are doing okay in the 2 weeks since our last filming of a real episode. And I was kind of thinking, what should I do today? And went back and forth on a bunch of things. If y'all have any ideas you'd like to see, let me know. In the meantime, I thought we could address different styles of knitting. Now, here in the US, there are a couple of styles that have become more prominent, and a lot of it's based on what hand you hold the yarn in. The customary names are English and Continental. English, you hold your yarn in your right hand, hold the tension, and Continental, you hold it in your left hand. So some people will actually call it right-handed or left-handed knitting. However, or sometimes they mean something totally different by that. I'm left-handed and I knit English style, so I hold the tension in my right hand. So you're not limited by what your dominant hand is as to which method you can do. It's more referring to English style predominantly developed in England, Continental predominantly developed on the continent of Europe. Now there's lots of different ways to knit, and there's other areas of the world that it's developed in that might have some similarities, but that's what we're going to focus on today. So when I teach knitting, and my intro Knitting 101 videos have all been English style. It's the easiest for me to communicate, probably because it's the way I learned to communicate how to knit. But the mechanics are a little different, but the stitch is the same, English or Continental. And some people say, ooh, I want to learn Continental because it's faster. It's faster once you learn it. There's less motion involved is one of the main things. We're going to take a look at it in just a second. It's not faster for everybody, though, because I will say I am a really fast English knitter, so my Continental, which is a little more cumbersome as you're going to experience, is not as fast. But yes, there's less motion involved. So especially if your hands hurt when you knit, you may want to do the one that has less kinetic motion involved. So now that I've talked an awful lot without showing you anything, let's get to it. So Continental knitting, we're going to focus on the knit stitch today, and maybe we'll try some versions of the purl stitch next week. As I mentioned in our intro, we're talking about these are two of many knitting styles. And the one that I have been using in most of my videos is English, where the yarn is held in your right hand, the tension. And it's commonly called you're throwing the yarn or you're flicking it with your finger. You're throwing it around or flicking it. Continental, on the other hand, haha, unintended pun, the yarn is held in your left hand, and it's commonly called picking because the needle will do a lot of the work. They are not dependent on your dominant hand. I am left-handed and I English knit, and my assistant at the shop, Liz, is right-handed, but she Continental knits. And for some of that, it depends on how you learn. For crocheters, I often will say a crocheter who wants to learn to knit may want to try Continental. Because many crocheters already hold tension in their left hand when they crochet. So, here are some things they have in common. They really are the same stitch. It's the same, you get the same result regardless of if you English style knit or Continental. There are still the what I like to call the 4 steps. You go in, the right needle goes into the stitch, the yarn goes around the right needle, you pull that yarn back through, and you take it off the left needle. And here's the thing, the yarn wraps in both of these, the yarn wraps counterclockwise around your right needle on that second step. But how that wrap occurs will change based on which hand is holding the tension or holding the yarn. That's what we're going to talk about today, and that's what we're going to draw and do. So let's take a look. These are my drawings up here. This is when we're ready for step 2. This is what it looks like, the stitch will look like. We have our left needle, we have our right needle that's gone, the right needle's gone in front to back. We're ready to wrap the yarn around. Somehow the yarn has to end up around this right needle. Let's color code these stitches a little bit so we can see what is happening in future pictures. All right? So let's make the stitch that we have stuck our needle into is orange. The stitch underneath it, in case that comes up, is blue. Let's make the next stitch here green. And the working yarn, when it comes up, I'm going to make purple. So in this picture here, this is a straight on shot. Front view. All right, I've had to back up, and I'm gonna have to refilm some of this because guess what? I can't tell my left from my right when I'm talking. So a lot of this is already color coded for us, which is wonderful. So you don't have to watch me color everything in. So here's our generic. We're on step 2 of the stitch. And I have my left needle here, and my right needle has stuck in. I've gone in step 1, front to back, right? Correct, I should say. And this is the front view. Now, if we tilted this, boop, just like that, where here's my right and here's my left, and we're looking straight down on it, regardless of your knitting style, what has to happen next? So let's see if we can, I'll put a little R there and a little L here. Regardless of what happens next, if we were looking straight down our right needle, that working yarn, no matter which hand you're holding it in, that working yarn has to end up encircling that right needle this way, coming around counterclockwise. That needs to happen regardless of which hand is holding the yarn. And the method of doing that changes depending on which hand you're holding the yarn in. So let's take a look. And I should say, we've got our first stitch that we're sticking into. We've got the stitch under, that's orange. We have the stitch underneath is blue. And we have the next stitch is green. So when you're looking down on it, we had our orange stitch that we're sticking into. You can see a little bit of the stitch underneath. Here's our green, our next stitch. That motion is what we want to see how to do depending on your style. Now, English style, again, I've got my colors here. I have my orange, my first stitch, my next stitch, the stitch underneath, just to kind of map it out. Here's my working yarn, purple. English style, which is the way that I have taught how to knit in these videos and how I teach in my shop, and how I personally do most of my knitting, but not all. Yarn is being held off to the right side here. So in order to get the correct counterclockwise wrap on your right needle for English style, the yarn needs to come around behind the needle and then in front between them. So around and behind and then between. That is the counterclockwise motion. It's called throwing the yarn because the yarn, you're doing a lot of motion with your right hand. Now in Continental, yarn is being held off here in your right hand. You still need to get it wrapped the same direction around this needle, but you don't need to come around in between. It's already over on this side. There are many different ways to continental knit, but the most classic motion is you take your needle and you pick it up by coming around the back of the yarn. It still ends up in the same place as up above. It still ends up doing that. But the method of doing it is moving your needle. There's less motion involved. You're scooping it rather than throwing the yarn. You're scooping it. English style, see if I can get them both in here. Whoop, kind of. English style throwing, or if you can do it with your finger, you're flicking. Continental, you're scooping or picking it up with the needle. So let's take a look at what this looks like with actual yarn. First, as a review for anyone who's watched my intro knitting videos, is English style. Yarn in your right hand with whatever tension you can set up. I find someone asked, shout out to Karen, someone asked about how to hold tension. There's so many ways. People come up with their own ways to hold tension. Wrap it around, grab it, release and grab every time. I personally will come from underneath, wrap it once around my index finger, and then put my first finger under, and it gives me great tension that I can reset. Wrap, scoop under, because then I have control with my finger for English style. So in, wrap around, see that's the throw, right? Let me start over. In, throw the yarn around, scoop back under, take off. You end up with a nice straight V, not twisted, underneath. And the legs on this, the one on the right is in front, the one on the left is in back. One more for English style. In, throw all the way around, scoop back under, take it off your left needle. Now, Continental, you're holding the yarn over here. I have a really funky, complicated way I hold tension, which has to do with how I learned to hold tension when I crochet. Liz will just wrap around her middle finger, just like I did on the other side. Some people will hold tension, control it with their finger with continental knitting. Honestly, because I'm used to crocheting, I like to hold here, so I use my middle finger to hold some tension. Let me show you. So here's how I hold tension if you haven't watched my crochet videos for holding tension in my left hand. I hold the yarn, palm up, my hand is palm up, come up between my pinky and my ring finger. I go all the way around and back up again. So I'm back between my pinky and ring finger, but I have circled my pinky. I go over my ring finger and down. I pull back behind my first two fingers and I flip it up. It's kind of funky, right? But it means if my fingers are together, yarn doesn't move. If I open my fingers, I can pull and let a lot of tension out if I need to. I'll show you one more time. Palm up, yarn between my pinky and ring finger, wrap around my pinky, so it's back between my pinky and ring finger with my palm up, over my ring finger and down, behind my first two fingers, and then I can go whatever direction I want. It gives me two options. I can hold with my middle finger, my thumb here, and pull with my first finger, or I can hold with my first finger and thumb and pull with my middle finger. This is how I'm comfortable continental knitting. Not everyone will be comfortable this way. But steps are the same as with the English style. In, front to back. Now, it needs to wrap around. We could wrap with our finger like that. See how that's kind of can happen. But the classic technique for continental knitting is once you go in, you scoop it. You scoop it just like that. Again, if I look down on it, it has wrapped just like my picture around. Scoop it back out to the front, take it off. If I was to do English style, I didn't show you that when we were doing English style, holding over here, wrap around, same thing is happening. Duck under, take off. But since this video is about continental knitting, let's stick with that, okay? So we're gonna come front to back under, pick it. It wraps the yarn counterclockwise, but we're using our needle to do it. Pick it. If you need to, when you come back under, you might want to keep some fingers here to make sure it doesn't pop off. Pull it back under, slide it off. Go out the way you came in, just like with English style knitting. So in, pick, scoop back under, keep your fingers there if you need to, take off. You can see how less motion involved, so it could be faster or hurt your hands less. In, the yarn's down here, scoop under the yarn, pull it back to the front, cast off. Or pull it off, I should say. In, scoop under, pull it back to the front, take it off. All of my stitches will look exactly the same, regardless of if I did them English style or continental. They all look exactly the same. So, thanks for coming along on the journey for continental knitting. I probably should have said at the very beginning that this was not intended to be an instructional how to knit first time out of the gate video. And I'll probably put it in the comment, like I'll probably put a little caption down there, boop-a-doop-a-doop, before people get too far into the video. It could be a little challenging if you've never knit anything before. It was more for someone who's English style who wants to try continental. If you watched my intro knitting video and went, this is complicated, especially if you're a crocheter, then this could have been a great video for you. It was more intended, like the part where I just did the knitting probably wasn't as in-depth and taking quite as much time as an instructional just learning to knit video. But I definitely recommend slowing it down or watching it over and over again to get the hang of it. Just wanted to give you a taste. If you need to see more of the same, please let me know. I could always do a follow-up video or a longer video if you want to watch more. I'm planning next week to do something on continental purling. There's a couple different ways that I know of to continental purl, and one variant is called the Norwegian purl. I absolutely love it. It's cool. It may make an appearance next week and then have its own video the following week. We'll see. If you guys know Liz and I, sometimes we don't plan things out in advance and we wing it. So let us know what you want to see and we'll do what we can. So thank you for watching. Give it a shot. Write me some feedback if you care to. Again, continental is not my most proficient method of knitting, but it can be a really fun one. I'm so used to English style. If I really need to get something fast done, I will English style knit it because that's just me. But many people will say that continental is faster, especially once you get the hang of it, because there's just less motion involved, so you can kind of breeze through it. So, I will leave you all now to enjoy your Monday or whatever day you're watching this, and say, may your crafting be filled with joy and confidence. And please consider giving us at least a thumbs up, subscribing if you haven't already, and if you want to sign up for a virtual lesson with me, we do them over Zoom near and far. If you want to sign up at the shop, we're booked a little ways out, but we always have cancellations, so check with us. I would love to help you in person as well. Masks and all, keeping us safe. I hope you all have a great week. Craft on, make some beautiful stuff, enjoy life. We'll see you. Bye-bye.
Hi, kitty. You just snuggled on me. Does that mean I shouldn't film today? Because you'd rather hang out with me here? Yes. Yes. Oh. Relaxing kitty. With the great white whiskers. Yes. I love it when you're calm.